Hey everyone, how's it going? This is the Fly Culture podcast. Welcome back. I can't believe this is episode number 46. We've been going over a year. I've been doing these over a year. I didn't realize, I only looked today to realize that it was actually June last year was the first one we've done. So I started doing them off sort of every couple of weeks, and I'm enjoying doing them so much that they turn out to be weekly now. It's been a really busy time for us at the moment. We've got the new magazine coming, and we've been busily packing that and sending that back out to the distributors. And that will be arriving. This is being recorded on September the 17th. It should be about the 21st, 22nd of September. It should start appearing with people. I'm really excited to see how people react to that and if they've enjoyed it as much as me. As ever, we've got a great mixture of stuff, and we take you from trout, grayling and salmon and pike fishing from across the UK and right across the world. And there's a real mixture of articles in there, beautifully written, fantastic photography as well. So I'm hoping that will be enjoyed by lots of people. There is only a limited run of it as well. We've sold out the last two runs of the magazine, which has been great. It's been fantastic to actually see it grow and hear that people are enjoying it. So you can find all the details on our website as ever at flyculturemag.com. I'm hoping to go fishing tomorrow. It's the warm spell that we've had, and I'm hoping that there might be a chance to catch some grayling on a dry fly as well. So that's going to be my task, hopefully tomorrow. But today I'm really excited to be joined by Stuart Watson. He's a self-confessed predator fish addict who loves to chase pike on a fly rod. I'm hoping to learn a little from him about tackling toothy critters along with his fly fishing timeline. Stuart, how's it going?
Good, mate. Good. Thanks for having me. Absolute honour to be on the podcast. Big fan of the podcast generally. So yeah, great to be here.
Thanks very much indeed. Well, it's good to have you here, and I'm going to pick your brains about lots of tips and stuff for myself and for lots of other people as well. And we were talking off mic, and it's really interesting, isn't it, about how we're seeing people show more of an interest in these, as I've called them before, more left field species, not really traditional species that you may
100%.
really always associate with fly fishing. I know all these sort of species have been on the radar for people for a long time with fly rods, but it really feels to me as though there's been a big upsurge in that. Are you sensing that?
100%. 100%. I mean, like, it's great to see. It's great to see. I mean, I go to some of my local waters, and the ratio of guys with a fly rod to a gear rod going after perch and pike, it's completely flipped. And I'm seeing so many more fly guys now, which is great, and I think it's down to many things. I think social media and YouTube has really opened everyone's eyes, and long may it continue, because I can't sit here. I never sit here and slate trout fishing. It's at my roots. But there is so much more that you can do. And people are starting to realise that. So it's exciting times.
Do you think that's something that's set to continue? Because we've obviously had this little spike of interest in the outdoors generally. We've had that spike in fishing as well, which has been great. But do you think that's the people who are coming in to, is trout fishing still the gateway to chasing these other species? Or do you think people are coming in now via a different door, via the pike or the carp or whatever it is? Do you think they're coming in that way now?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think there's still a very big percentage of guys that, we've all been there as trout fishermen, and, you might have been a teenager, and something I was going to mention later on, but I mean, it was something that captured my imagination when I was a teenager, fishing one of the big North Wales reservoirs, and I'm stripping back a cat's whisker, and line goes tight. I was like, yeah, bloody hell, what's this? This is a good trout, and it came up, and it was a 5-6 pound jack, and that was it. I was hooked. I could not believe it. I couldn't believe that I just caught this pike, and as a guy, I suppose, or that it captures the imagination of the monster of the deep. And I think the trout guys will always have interactions with him on the big trout waters. and instead of people looking at them in a bad way and saying, "Oh, like we used to, oh, they're a pest and they eat all the trout," and that's gone. Well, I think that there is still somewhat of that negativity, but it's not like it used to be. And on the flip side, like you say, I've had so many carp guys and so many gear pike anglers that have come to me and said, God, you guys are killing it on the fly. Like, how do I do this? How do I get into it? And they're picking up a fly rod. We all know you can go on eBay and you can pick up a fly rod, an 8 weight, a 9 weight, and you can get on the local carp lake and chuck dog biscuit flies and catch carp, and that's great fun. Middle of summer, that is awesome fun. And it's exactly the same for pike, perch, chub. Chub are massively underrated for the fly. Um, so yeah, I think guys are. I think all different genres of fishing are now looking at the fly and going, okay, this isn't as prim and proper as we used to think it was. It's not for the gentry anymore. I can go down the local canal and I can catch pike. I can catch perch. Awesome. It's good. It's good to see.
Nice.
I hope it continues. I do hope it continues.
So coming back to your personal journey there, you caught that first pike on a Welsh lake. Was that the pivotal moment? Was that the tipping point? Did the trout stuff from there go away, or did you suddenly think, yeah, that's going now, I want to go tackle these and then learn some more, and it's sort of built from there?
Do you know what, Pete? It was funny. I think I must have been about 18, 19. And I've been fly fishing since I was maybe 9, 10. I can't quite remember exactly the age. And I was very much, trout. Yeah, I live on the Wirral. So North Wales is my playground. So I was always on the Welsh Dee, trout and grayling and such like, and the big still waters. Um, and one of the guys that taught me to fly fish, he was a real old boy, and he used to tell me these stories of these monster pike that they used to catch in the Dee and some of the big reservoirs and Bala and such like. Um, and as a kid, especially at 9, 10, 11, I was like, wow, I want to catch one of these pike, and never really never really had the confidence, I suppose. And obviously, at that age, you don't have the funding to go out and buy tons of pike gear and go out piking. Um, so I didn't even think about it. But then that moment when I had that pike, it really struck me, and I was like, okay, what's a pike doing taking my fly? I'm fishing for trout here. What's going on? Um, and that was it. I was obsessed. I came back. I tied loads of pike flies, huge gaudy things that with an 8 weight reservoir trout rod, I was failing miserably to cast them, and I think I must have had about 4 or 5 trips out to try and get a bigger one. It didn't happen, and I kind of thought, oh, it was a fluke, or no one really does this, and that was that. Um, and it wasn't until maybe my mid 20s that I think we were speaking off mic as well about social media and stuff, and the YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, and you start to see all these people in Scandinavia and Canada, and they're catching these huge pike on fly, and I thought it's definitely doable. The evidence is there. I need to work out how to do this, and that was it. Then I just kind of just ran with it, and researching, reading books. There's some great books out there. YouTube, YouTube, and you can search anything on there, and you'll find a how-to on it. Um, so yeah, it pretty much was the pivotal moment that I thought, you know what, I need to chase these fish. These are awesome.
It was interesting you mentioned about the books and stuff like that, because pre-social media, I remember excuse my pronunciation, Adswire book coming out, and I bought
Yes,
that the
yeah,
moment it
yeah,
came out. And that was the first time I thought, and I'd caught some, as I said, with Nick, who's been a guest a couple of times on here. and he was sort of doing a fair bit down here as well. And I was lucky enough to go fish with him and catch some. But that was the first book. There probably were some before that, but that was the first one I was really aware of that really was out and out pike, had dressings of fly patterns, had, and the hooks came out, I think, around the similar sort of time as well under his name. And there was, and you thought, oh, there's a little bit of a movement sort of happening here. And like I said at the beginning, it felt as though there was stuff going on, but it definitely feels different again now. And, do you feel that that is really following there now from the social media more than, people who tried it a little while ago?
Yeah, I think 100%. I mean, like, you mentioned Nick, and do you know what? Nick is always someone that, you know, God, no offense to Nick, but I do kind of forget about Nick sometimes, and I do remember seeing Nick catching pike on the fly, and he did like a how-to catch pike on fly. And I remember watching that and thinking, it is doable. It's doable in UK waters. Like, how do I work this out, and how do I go about it? Um, I think, speaking of books, it was Michael Jensen was the book I had, which was pike fly fishing, and it was like the encyclopedia for me of pike fly fishing. And there was these stunning photos in there from Scandinavia with these big, nice dressed poppers and stuff. Um, and yeah, I think it's really going to run from here. I think I think the one thing that really helped it, in my opinion, was Fly versus Jerk with Canal Gratis on YouTube. I think that really, it was it is such a professionally shot show, um, and it shows the world. You put a fly angler up against a spin fisherman, and they can hold their own. And I think a lot of people have taken to watching that, even if they're not a fly fisherman, they might have been a gear fisherman watching it going, oh, let's watch the gear guys kick the fly guy's ass. And most episodes, most gear guys will be saying, wow, these these guys with the fly rods are really killing it. Um, and I think it's captured everyone's imagination. And the more of that type of media coming out, it's great to see, you know.
Yeah.
Look at, you mentioned on one of the previous podcasts with the Mortimer fishing show, um, and even he's taken a fly rod and goes piking. That I thought that was brilliant to see for pike fly fishing in the UK. That was fantastic. I was so made up that it comes up with the title page pike, and you think, oh yeah, they're going dead baiting. And you could see him walking along the bank with a fly rod. And I was like, he's going to chuck a fly for them. Yes, this is awesome. So yeah, it is gaining popularity year on year, and long may it continue.
Great. It's interesting you mentioned the White House and Mortimer program, because I think that's reached so many people in such a good, positive way. And, I've seen comments about, well, he's fishing the test for stockfish, but that's not what it's about, is it? It's a much,
Not
I think it's guys looking at their mortality. It's looking at other things intertwined with fishing, and they do it so
yeah,
well. And it's
yeah,
engaging. Yeah, it's engaging people who weren't fishing previously. They may not fish, but it's putting a
yeah.
positive spin on fishing, which can't do any harm. And I'm really thrilled to see it. And I think that's the third series now, isn't it? Which is
I think
really
it is. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's really pleasing, and it's great to.
Do you know what it takes me back to? It takes me back to Passion for Angling.
Mm,
Remember that show, Passion for
mm,
Angling? And do you know what? As a kid, that was so magical. To watch that, I can't even remember when it was on, maybe Friday night or Saturday morning or something. It was just magical, wasn't it? And it was two guys, the camaraderie, they kind of took the mickey out of each other, but they went on these adventures. And it's
mm.
the same with this show. It's great to see. It's really good to see. And like you said, there's so much more to the show. There's a whole meaning of life, and you know, enjoying the now. That we could all, or everyone out there could take stock from, especially in the crazy year we find ourselves in this year. I think we need more of that in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been talking. told you we'd go off course all over the place. The guys, apologies
Yes,
for that. We talked about your entry, and that was the traditional route into fly fishing, I guess, on lakes and reservoirs, onto the river as well. Where did you cut your teeth on? What sort of lakes and
so
things?
pretty much uh, it was a bit strange for me, really. Like still waters were almost an afterthought. Um, my my mentor was a family friend, a guy called Jim Jones. Um, Now he was a family friend. My father and mother were really good friends with his daughter, um, and it was just, I think it was one of those freak days where I think someone was having a barbecue and Jim was there, and I must have been 8 or 9, and I was into coarse fishing at the time, and Dad couldn't keep me away from the ponds. I was just down catching perch and roach, and I was just obsessed with it. I was awful at football, so I had nothing else. It was literally just fishing. Um, and Jim kind of took me and my dad under his wing, and he said, if you really want to get into fishing, like you need to give fly fishing a go. Um, and he very much he just took us in and said, right, we're going fly fishing. And it wasn't straight onto the still waters. It was right. You're going to need waders. You're going to need a 5/6 weight. Come around to the house. I'll teach you to cast. And we were straight onto the Welsh D. And it was straight onto the Welsh D. You know, dry flies for grayling and trout, and through the midwinter for the grayling, and it was just magical. Especially as being such a young lad, um, it was great. Some of my fondest memories as a child is standing in the river, and me and my dad still laugh about it now. Jim passed away a few years back, unfortunately, but we still talk about him now, and we say, some of the days you'd be stood in the middle of the river in the middle of winter, and you'd just look upstream, and you know what it's like in the middle of winter, and that mist's coming off the river, and all you could smell was just pipe smoke. And still now, when I smell pipe smoke, it just reminds me of Jim, because I never fished. I don't know how he used to catch fish, because he never fished. He stood in the middle of the river, smoking his pipe. Every now and again, he'd just put some spiders over, and he'd have like a 2 pound grayling. And I just looked up to this guy like, this guy's like a wizard. Like, how does he do this? I'm fishing like crazy, and I'm not catching, or catching very little. And he just knew it. He knew that water like the back of his hand. And I think when I hit my teen years, as most teen lads do, you want to go bigger, you want to go better, and I want the big fish. I want to catch lots of fish, and so obviously the natural progression was to move to the still waters. But I guess I never really, I enjoyed it. To say I'd not enjoyed it is a lie. I enjoyed it, but it didn't capture me like the rivers did, and the rivers still do. Um, and then, obviously, then I turned to the dark side, and the predators took over. So yeah, that was pretty much the story.
And when that journey started, it must have been really cool learning it alongside your dad and being able
Mm,
to hit the water with
it
him.
was great. Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, as a family, we come from like a really close family. It's my dad and his 2 brothers and their sons. So our cousins, or my cousins, are almost like brothers. So it was always like down Tenby or Cornwall when we were real kids on mackerel trips and crabbing and in the rock pools with crab lines, and that was our youth. Um, and then when I kind of took the interest in coarse fishing, um, obviously Dad wouldn't just go and plonk me at a pond and say, "I'll pick you up at 6." Even in the 80s, that wasn't really acceptable. Um, so he got gear as well, and we'd go out fishing, and it was great. And then to meet Jim, and for me and my dad to go on that journey together, it was great. It really was, and it very quickly escalated. We fished the rivers for trout and grayling maybe till I was maybe 16, 17. And Jim was a big salmon guy. he used to dabble with grayling for a bit of fun, but he was salmon through and through. Um, and he started taking my dad up to the Devon. Um, and my dad came back with these stories of salmon fishing on the Devon, and that was it. I wanted some of that. I had to learn to cast a double hander, and I want to get after these salmon. And so very quickly we were, probably before I was 18, I was up on the Devon and the Tweed and on the Welsh Dee on our doorstep. And we were fishing double handers and fishing for salmon, and like I say, it escalated very quickly,
And does your
which
dad,
was great.
sorry, does your dad still share
That's right.
your passion for pike on the fly as well? Does he come out pike fishing with you? And
My dad is the most infuriating fisherman in the world. Um, a funny story about my dad. My dad's fished for pike once, and I dragged him out onto a Welsh still water and said, "Dad, you're going to love it. Stop with the salmon. You're doing all these miles. You're going to kill yourself. Come on, come out with me. Let's go and catch some pike." He said, "Okay, I haven't got any gear." I said, "Well, what have you got?" And he said, "I've got my switch rod, 10-weight switch." I said, "Oh, okay, bring that. That should do." So I set him up with floating line. I think it was like a 10-foot leader, bite trace, small little jig fly. And he did this first drift over a nice bit of structure. I said, "You're fishing a jig fly, let it get down, strip it up, let it drop back down." Okay, okay. Doodle, doodle. Line goes tight. I think I've got something. Okay. So I'm thinking, this is going to be a 10-pounder. He's messing around here. I said, "Come on, giving him some stick. Get it up. Come on, old man, get it up." And this thing came up. And anyway, long story short, got it in the net. And he just looked at me and he said, "Is it a good one?" And it was, at the time, it was the biggest pike I'd ever seen in my life. And I think it went 27-3. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, the first day he's came out and he's cast his 27. And he's not been out since. He's not been out for pike since then, because he is salmon through and through. And I mean, Pete, as a salmon angler, your heart is always going to be with salmon. And my dad is salmon through and through.
Mm.
I mean, if I called him up and said, "Fancy a day out," he'd come. Of course he would. But his passion lies with salmon stuff, for sure.
I can't move on.
He still can't cast one.
I can't move on without, you mentioned a river that's very special to me, the Devon. And actually this week
Yeah.
would have been, I've not been the last couple of years, this week would have been the week I think I was up there. Whereabouts were you fishing on the Devon? Can you remember?
Do you know what? I was going through the notes and stuff today. I was thinking, what was the name of the beat? I can't for the life of me remember. I know it was the Middle Devon. Um, it was a stunning piece of water, absolutely beautiful. There was a 2-story fishing lodge right on the river.
Wow.
On this, it was absolutely beautiful. Um, and like I said, my dad and Jim must have done 5 or 6 trips up there. And they used to combine it with trips up to the Hemsdale. So they used to go up for like 2 weeks, and I think they used to do the Helmsdale first and then hit the Devon on the way back down. Um, but it was a stunning place. I caught my first sea trout ever on the Devon, middle of the night.
Yeah, lovely.
And that, it's a beautiful river, beautiful river.
And
I'd like to get up there again sometime.
And of course, the trout are pretty spectacular further up as well, aren't they?
I've heard. Do you know, I've never been up to fish the trout up there, but I do hear some very good things. But yeah, one day I need to get back up there.
So let's move on a little bit now, because I've got you. I want to really sort of ask you about pike fishing, to get some idea of how best to set up for them, how best to find them, how best to entice them to eat the fly, and a little bit about patterns and things like that too. Where would we start with tackle? I guess we're throwing big flies for them. Where do you what's your benchmark rod? I know you mentioned your dad's switch rod, but is it 8-9 weight rods that you're really looking to launch flies with?
I mean, whenever I'm speaking to beginners and guys that are just kind of looking to have a go, it's hard, isn't it? Because if you're going to go after a new species, you don't want to go and buy a whole range of new rod weights that you may never use again. But if you're coming from a still water background and you've got an 8-weight still water res outfit, it will certainly do. It will do the job for your smaller pike. So if you're going to go and fish the canals and stuff like that, and just have a dabble, just kind of see if you like it. An 8-weight for sure, as a starting point. I guarantee you will very quickly move on. Um, if someone's saying to me, I want to buy a pike outfit, what would I tell them? I would tell them as a starter a 9-weight, because it's the responsible way to go. Um, with an 8-weight, you can handle a fish up to £10. We all know that from stillwater trout fishing. But you go onto a big stillwater resi with big pike, and you hook a £20 plus pike on an 8-weight, you're in trouble. And more importantly, if that's not fair on the pike. You know, they're delicate creatures. They're vicious, but they're delicate. And overplaying, as with most fish, is not good. So a 9-weight just gives you that extra little bit of beef that you can lean into them. You can bully them a bit. There's a lot of personal preference with pike fly fishing. I've got close friends that only fish 10s. I've got close friends that I regard top of their game, and they only fish 9-weights, and they catch monsters with 9-weights. But as a starting point, yeah, you'll get away with an 8 as a tester. But if you're going to invest in a full outfit, I'd say 9-weight all day long.
Yeah. And rod action wise, I guess, are you looking stiffer rods rather than more medium action rods? Is it stiffer that you prefer?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, medium fast to fast. I'm a big fan of fast rods. That's personal preference. But yeah, you want a medium fast. I mean, you're not going to start off. You could start off with the big, 6-7 inch flies, but you don't have to. I don't know about mentioning brands and stuff, but there's a lot of fly manufacturers out there that sell, pike flies that are very straightforward, kind of deceiver kind of patterns. That aren't really any bigger than a sea bass fly, say. And you'll catch pike on them. You will. I mean, I've seen mid-20 pike taking small, 3-inch flies, and they'll hammer them. So by no means do you have to go into the sport and think, oh, I can't do that because my shoulder's a bit bad and I can't chuck 6-7 inch flies. You don't have to. You can go and fish 3-4 inch flies, quite light stuff, and on its day you might be more productive than the guy chucking, the big 8-10 inch fly. It's all personal preference, and I think that is the really nice thing with pike fly fishing. That it's so much in its infancy in the UK that there almost isn't any rules really, to what you want to do with it. If you want to go out, if you want to go out and chuck big flies and fish almost like that kind of musky style, you can. But if you want to go out and chuck 3-inch jig flies, fine. That's your preference. They'll all catch fish, guaranteed. They will all catch fish on their day. You just got to find the way that works for you. A lot of guys, that I fish with joke with me quite a lot that a lot of the flies I tie, I take a lot of inspiration from the musky style flies, and there's a certain pattern called a mega jerk, and it works like a jerk bait lure. It's proper side to side cutting, showing its profile, and I take them out the box, and guys like, oh God, how are you going to chuck that? But that's what I like to fish. I like chucking them because I love the action. I love the hang. Again, going back to what we were saying before, it's personal preference. It's definitely personal preference. There's a lot of discussions, and I've had many discussion over a few beers with a few of the pike guys that some guys like an up and down action, like a jiggy kind of fly action. Some people like myself like a side to side. Some people can't stand a side to side. But it's what you feel confident in fishing. Um, and as in most things in fly fishing, if you're not chucking something that you have confidence in, then you're stacking it against yourself. You've got to be fishing with confidence. Um, so it's just getting out there and just try, just have a go. I guarantee you'd be very surprised what you can pull out the local canal or the local river
Great.
with
There's some great tips
three,
there, and
4 inch deceivers.
yeah, and there's some really great tips there because the confidence thing. I'm a big subscriber to. I like though what you're saying about the fly because of my understanding, they tend to take the fly side on, don't they? Pike. So I kind
They,
of like what you're saying
yeah,
about that movement and how they're like that. And the other thing that
yeah.
struck me that you were talking about was sore shoulder. And with this heavier stuff, it's probably worth, I guess, people thinking about either looking up and learning how to double haul or getting some instruction, because that's probably going to pay you big dividends as well, isn't it? To be able to launch those big flies a little bit
a
further.
100%, 100%. If you can put the time into learning to double haul, and like you say, even go to a professional, go to a fly casting coach, and get someone to teach you how to properly double haul. Um, and you get on those big waters, your Graffham, your Rutlands of the world. Even if you're on the shore, if you can double haul, you're saving your shoulders so much.
And tell me about reels. I guess how important is the reel from a sense of fish running and drag and braking system? Is that super important?
Again, it's personal preference. Again, I've got lots of friends that will play mid £20 pike with the line. Like you play a trout. Um, I'm a firm believer in having a reel with a really good drag system. Um, if you go and spend all this money on top notch gear with top notch gears, you want to use them. You should be using them. But again, like I say, that is a personal preference, 100%. It's not essential, I would say. So, if you're on a budget and you can afford to go and buy a 9 weight, but you're thinking, do you know what, my 8 weight trout reel, the gear's not great, but do you know what? Yeah, do it. It's a starting point. Go and give it a go. Um, I think reels have came on technology wise so much in the last 10 years, and you can get a reel with a fantastic gear system for very little, really. Um, so yeah, I mean, I would say it's not essential, but if you've got one, it will come in handy.
So I guess for me, one of the most important things is probably the fly line. And I know when I first started doing it that we didn't have fly lines. Well, you could chop them, obviously, chop them up a little bit
Yeah,
with abrupt front tapers that, and that's what we want, don't we, in pike fishing, that
yeah,
turns the fly over, that payload over nice and
yeah,
easily.
100%.
Um, the other interesting thing for me, I'd always done it with an intermediate line, and I guess there's different situations. But is there, if somebody looking to do this, would you recommend one particular line density that would do the job for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say you're right in what you say there, Pete. That an intermediate is a great all rounder, especially if you're just getting into the sport. Now, whether I suppose if you're going to be going fishing on your local canal and you know your local canal is only 4 foot deep at best, then maybe a regular intermediate is going to be a bit too much. Um, there's lines on the market now, slow mos, so really slow intermediates and just get it under that surface. Now, if you're fishing a canal or a drain, ideal. Whenever I go and fish the fens, the first line in my bag is a slow mo because it's ideal. It's a shallow conditions. You could even fish a popper with it. It's a really nice, versatile line. But as a general all-rounder, yes, intermediate, even if you're fishing the big waters. There's I know people that go and fish, the real big waters. You're fishing in 20 to 30 foot of water, and they're still fishing intermediate lines. Because there's almost a common misconception that pike are lazy and they're just going to be sat on the bottom, and you've got to just put a fly right above their nose. And we all know as fishermen, you look down into the water and you go, oh, there's about 4 foot visibility. Okay, well, I need a sink 3. I need to drag it right down, and I need to get down there. You don't at all. I've had one occasion on the float tube, funny enough, on a big reservoir, and I was sat in 19 foot of water, and I'd done a drift in the float tube, and thought, I'll just paddle up and go and do that drift again. Flopped the fly in front of me, started paddling, whoosh, and I think it went 17. Must have came up must have seen it from what? If it may have been sat mid water, maybe, but it's seen it in 10 foot of water, let's say, and it came up and hammered it on the surface. So there is a massive misconception when you're starting out that you have to get down to them. You don't at all. Very much like salmon, if you ever said to a newbie in salmon fishing, we're fishing an 8 foot pool, and we're going to fish a floating line, and we're going to fish a sunray, and we're going to fish it right on the top. As a beginner, they probably look at you and go, well, don't we need to get right down to them? Like, they're down the bottom, they're not at the top. But we all know a salmon will come up and smash it on the surface. It's exactly the same with pike. They're looking up, and they're upwards hunters, so they're always looking above them.
Yeah.
So I think, to summarise, you're better to be above them than below them. Yeah.
Good tips. So usually I bang on a lot about fly lines and stuff, but I guess also with pike in particular, that the leader setup, primarily obviously tippet I'm leaning towards, but tell me how your leader set up, how long it is, how you're attaching the fly to the tippet and the tippet to the leader as well. What sort of length are you using, strengths, and what sort of things are you using for that?
Yeah. Generally, as a rule, I tend to use 20 to 25 pound fluoro. If I'm fishing in intermediate, no more than 5 foot. I tend to do it on a loop-to-loop system. So perfection loop onto on your tippet, onto your main line, onto your fly line, and then the use of the new, well, not new now, but the knottable wires you can get for pike fly fishing now. Partridge do one, Fulling Mill do one, Cortland do one, and they're all knottable. You can put a perfection loop in any of those, and then you just do 2 perfection loops, loop to loop, super simple. At least a foot of bite trace, and then down to the business end, it is purely personal preference. A lot of people use the fast hatch clips. If you've seen those fast hatch quick clips, with that, talking before about the hang of the fly. Using the fast hatch clips does add a bit more weight, so you will tend to get the fly will dip a bit. So a lot of guys, myself included, I like to just use a normal loop knot, and just do okay, you're going to use more trace, but you're presenting that fly perfectly. So as soon as it strips, it's just stopping and hovering and maybe gently slowing down and then off again. But like I say, as starting out, those fast attach clips are fantastic, or any spinning clips for that matter. But there is, if you don't want to go down that line, you don't have to. I think is what I'm trying to allude to. That if you get some of this knottable wire leader, you can just tie the fly straight on, like you're fishing for trout. it's no problem. And I think that was one of the main things, to be honest, that kind of, when I first started out, really had me a bit perplexed. And I was going out buying spinning traces, and I was tying on spinning traces, but spinning trace, you've got swivel at one end, you've got big heavy wire, you've got a clip at the other end, and we all know that. I mean, that's extra weight, and you're trying to cast, a big fly. And if when I was starting, off with an 8 weight and not the right line, and it was a trout floating line, and it was a nightmare because it was tons of weight and it was not the right setup. With the modern pike fly lines now, like you said, the 8.5 meter heads, that kind of thing. You can punch them into a wind and turn the fly over, no problem. And even with putting a fast attached clip on, it's not an issue these days.
It was interesting. I kind of remember the first, I don't know if it was the first, but the first I was aware of was the American fishing wire. And you could actually, it was game changing, really, I guess, in some respects, that it was nice and easy to attach to your leader. And also, like you say, with a loop knot, was really easy to attach your fly as well. So it really did change things when that first came out. And I remember that really well.
The stud one?
No, it was called, I think it was AFW.
Yes, yeah. I think that was the very first one I bought, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it was, like you say, it was game changing. It was absolutely game changing. You were just thinking, I can knock this like fluoro, So you kind of chucked all those swivels away, and you don't need them, and you crack on like you're fishing for trout, really.
Yeah, it felt really natural to do that and really easy to actually do that. One of the things I was just thinking, actually, while we were chatting, just a quickie to throw in there, when you said about densities and stuff like that and intermediate, what about using poly tips and stuff like that? Have you ever tried that? I was just wondering if somebody, again, fitting with kit that they've already got, if it's a salmon background or whatever it is, whether using slightly different tips. Have you tried that, and does it work?
I have tried it, especially the 5 foot airflow salmon tips. Obviously, my background, I have piles of them in my salmon bag, and they work really well. So if you, I don't know, if you go on the internet and you find a salmon kit and it comes with a pike kit and it comes with a floating line, it's not the end of the world. Go out and get yourself a couple of, a range of 5 foot poly tips, a fast sink and a super fast sink or something. And if it's a semi decent pipeline with the right head on the front, it'll turn that over nicely. I would say you probably shorten your leader a bit. So maybe instead of a 5 foot leader, go down to maybe 3 foot. The great thing with pike, they're not leader shy. If they're going to hit something, they're going to hit it no matter what. They're not going to be fussed about, what's that clear stuff above it. They're not looking at that. So yeah, you can try them. I definitely used them when I was starting out, and they definitely work.
Cool. 100%. Cool. Yeah, it's just interesting as how I sometimes, while you're saying stuff, I'm thinking, my little brain is ticking over, thinking, I wonder if that will, give me extra versatility, I guess. But so let's take.
Well, it makes it a lot easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take you to the water now, and let's imagine we've got our kit ready. We'll go into patterns in a minute, but what are you looking for? Let's say you're fishing. Give us a canal scenario, and then perhaps on a canal, are you looking to cover water? What are you looking for to find those fish?
I mean, anyone I really talk to about finding and locating pike, I say the same thing, and it's almost a bit cheesy, but it's think like a pike. Pike are, if you look at the makeup of a pike and the way it hunts, and if as soon as you pick up any book on fish and read about the pike, they're built as ambush predators. Their turn of pace is insane. So they're built to sit in a position within the river or the lake or the canal that best suits them to not be seen and to ambush anything that comes within eating distance. So, for instance, a pike in the canal, I think the key with a canal is don't forget the margins. And it's something that as fly anglers we kind of all forget. We want to cast to the far bank every single time. And that's the great thing with fishing canals. You don't, it's literally, you can take a box of flies and just fish maybe 2-3 foot from the bank and fish in front of you, fish behind you, and concentrate on those margins. The way most canals and pretty much all canals, it's very shallow in the edges, and then dropping down into a V in the center. And the pike will look to sit on those edges, and anything that's coming through that deeper water, it's theirs. They've got the perfect spot to ambush. And to be honest, I really enjoy fishing canals. I mean, my local canals don't hold particularly big fish, but they hold a lot of them. And I always say it's a great place for the guys to go and start, because you'll go and catch a lot of jacks, and you'll have a lot of fun doing it. And treat it almost like you go into on a trout fishery, fan cast it, concentrate on those edges, and work your way out. And as much as I'm saying the fish will be sitting on the margins, you will find the odd fish if there's, I don't know, say there's a bit of structure in the centre of the canal that's given a perfect ambush point for that pike. We don't know it's there, but he certainly knows it's there. So it's worth covering. And break down a canal that way, and take it in 20, 25, 30 foot steps, fan cast it, concentrate on your edges, move down, and just work your way down. It's a lovely way to fish. But I mean, taking that advice of looking for structure, you can literally turn that to every piece of water you're going to fish. If you're going to go fish a river, predators aren't stupid. They're not going to sit in fast flowing water, expelling energy, chasing fish. It doesn't make sense. So what will they do? They'll go and sit in slacker waters where they are close to a bit of fast water, that if they see something they can quickly shoot out, kill it, back into the slow water, and they're fed in the waters, and they're happy. So rivers, you're looking for your back eddies, your deeper undercut banks is always a good one. Never fails to shock me whenever I'm fishing the river that your fly's swung in and it's tight to the bank, and that's where the fish are. They're under that bank and they're just waiting for the next meal to come along. And the same, with the big lakes. If you get onto the big resis, any type of structure, it gets tough. It gets tough in the really big resis that are kind of a little bit uniform bottoms, and you're looking for almost the slightest depressions that will give the pike somewhat of an advantage over the prey fish. Some reservoirs you go to, there's one in particular I fish that is full of just rocky outcrops and old walls and stuff like that. It's not great for the fly collection because you tend to lose most of them on the walls. But it's ideal for the pike. It's just ideal hunting ground. So if you're lucky enough to have a fish finder or a sonar, just look for those structures, look for those drop offs, and think like a pike. That's the thing I would definitely drill into everyone. Just think like a pike, and you won't go far wrong.
Great tips. I guess I started with the canal because it's a good place for a beginner to start, isn't it? And then work from there. But the river stuff, I remember watching John Hall in action on the chalk streams. I think it was a little while back now, on the fly fishing film tour, and a film that they did in film fishing there, and you see some of these sort of reports of wonderful pike being caught on rivers. And do you have
Yeah.
a favourite? Which is your favourite method of fishing for pike? Or what's your
For me, is
favourite
rivers.
location? Sorry.
I just love fishing rivers. I really do. I mean, invariably, I end up fishing the big reservoirs most, purely because of conditions and whatnot. Because obviously the Welsh Sea does warm up very quickly, and as soon as you get up to that 18 degrees, it's not safe. You shouldn't be fishing for pike in that kind of water temperatures. So obviously you have to go to the bigger waters where you've got cooler temps. But yeah, I mean, just fishing for pike in the river is just awesome. It is just fantastic. Um, I had a great day exploring a new beat early winter last year with a good friend, and he'd had a good pull, and he said, "Oh, come down, cover this fish again. There's a fish there. It's feeding, it's definitely feeding." There's a good flow through the middle of the river, so yeah, we're fishing. It's quite a good flow. The river was quite high, and we're fishing sink three lines. And yeah, my mate had said, he's definitely taking fish here. He's just hit me twice, but nothing's connected. Come and cover it, come and cover it. So I hooked this sink three into the middle of the flow, and almost like salmon fishing, just let it swing round into the slack, right onto the crease. I just started stripping back. And I was on quite a high bank, looking right down, and in the shallows it was maybe 4 foot. I'm stripping back, getting quicker, getting quicker, and this thing just emerged from the darkness. And the back on it, you could have put a saddle on it. It was huge. It was absolutely huge. Just followed it right up. Its belly must have touched the sand, and it just turned and was back in. And two casts later, anyway, kept on covering the fish. And anyway, long story short, she hit it in the end, and she hit it mid flow, and she tore up upriver like a bloody salmon. It was insane, and I mean, she was about 18 and a half pound, and to see a wild pike come out of the depths like that, chasing a fly, is just spectacular. And even as a pike angler, I've caught bigger pike, but to see, I know that fish is 100% wild. That fish can go anywhere in that river, terrorize whoever it likes, and then it's coming behind your fly, and it's just the way they follow flies is just beautiful, and it's so you can see the intent. They're just following it. Like, you make one wrong move, and I'm going to have you. And then they tease you, and they turn around and they swim back. But they're there, and you've just got to get after them. They're great fish.
Yeah. So rivers for you, big tick for those. Um,
Oh yeah.
what about fly patterns? I can see behind you that there's some fantastic tinsel collection and feathers and the odd fly and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How many? Again, if someone's interested in, how many patterns do you think you need? Is there a lot, or are there any key ingredients that you think would be really important to attract pike?
I think if you're going to start off, you've got your standard deceivers, your standard bog standard deceiver patterns. Um, will always catch a pike. They will. It stands to sense. They look like small fry or small bait fish. They will get hammered. The big one for me is bulkheads and what's called a Buford. So this is where we're using lots of bucktail in the head. So you're creating a lot of volume, a lot of buoyancy. And it goes back to what we were saying before about the hang and how pike love to hit a bait from the side. And a lot of the time with a Buford or a bulkhead, if you strip it quite hard and you pause in between your strips, the fly will shoot forward, obviously, and then the resistance of the bucktail at the front will kick the fly off. So you get this turn sideways, show its profile, and you will always get the hit you'll always get the hit on the pause, and you're reaching for the next strip, and bang. So Bufords, bulkheads, standard deceiver baitfish patterns. Um, you can't go wrong with a kind of like a flash tail fly. So anything like that kind of style. I mean, obviously, with Nicholas Bauer and um, fly versus jerk and the whole wiggle tail thing, um, pike flies have really evolved from the traditionals, and we've got these fantastic tails now, and it's almost getting like spinning, but a lot lighter. Um, but they're all attractors, So anything you just need, I'd say those three. Those three would do you 100%. Deceiver,
Mhm.
some kind of bulkhead or Buford, and a flush fly.
And for our listeners, the fly that Stuart was showing me was a really tinsely fly with a wiggle tail on the back of it. So you've
Yeah,
got, I guess, the brightness to attract the fly and that extra seduction from the way that tail wiggles in the water as well. So
yeah, yeah.
nice and simple. Is it fly size as well? Is that within, if you've got a deceiver, does it have to be a certain size, or is there a one sort of
Not
size
at
that
all.
sort of works for all?
I'd say anything from a 4.0 to a 2.0 is a nice starter size. Not amazingly difficult to cast, especially if you're fishing like a single deceiver, um, a non-articulated deceiver. Yeah, I mean that's a great size. Anything from I think if you look at your water and you say, and especially if you've coarse fished it, and the stamp of roach or rudd in that water is 3 inch, match the hatch. That's the kind of size you want to be fishing. Um, I've seen so many guys that have gone to pipe waters and they're fishing, big stuff like I just showed you there, 6, 7 inch streamers, and for a fact that there's tons of rudd in there, or tons of roach in there, but they very rarely you get one over 3, 4 inch. Well, that's what the pike is going to be feeding on. So match it and give them what they want.
Excellent. We've sort of covered. We've had so many good tips and advice in this. Um, as someone wanting to try piking for the first time, what else would they need equipment wise? Like landing mat and stuff.
Yeah, I would say 100% a landing mat. Like I said before, pike are ferociously looking and a little bit intimidating, but they are amazingly delicate. Um, so a good soft landing mat, a good sized net. You'd be amazed the amount of times I see guys going out fishing for pike on big waters with like sea trout nets. And okay, if you're fishing the canal and stuff like that, that size net is going to be suitable. But if you know you've got a chance at a 20-pound pike, then make sure you've got a good net, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. There's nothing worse than you finding yourself on a big reservoir with a 20-pound pike folded in two in a small sea trap net, and you're going to be panicking, and you don't want to be panicking. That's the time where you want to get yourself organised, have a big enough net that you can put the net on the side, fish are still in the water, let it rest up, get yourself organised, get your mat out, and get ready to deal with that fish in the safest possible way. On that same note, obviously, long nose pliers goes without saying. These pike's teeth are uh, incredibly sharp to the point of you won't even feel it. If they nick you, you won't even feel a thing. And the next thing you know, all this blood's coming out from nowhere, and you've got no idea where it's coming from. And it turns out it's your thumb that's cut in half. So yeah, long nose pliers. Keep your fingers away from those teeth as much as you can. Um, I always say to any guys that I'm speaking to starting up, have wire cutters and bolt cutters, just to have them in your bag just in case. There's nothing worse that if you get a pike, it's really inhaled a small 3 inch deceiver fly, it's taking it right back. Especially if you're fishing barbless hooks, it would be safer for the pike and safer for you to just snip it off, sacrifice the fly, and give that pike the best chance you can to get it revived and get it back in the water and let it fight for another day. And on that, like I say, barbless hooks is a big advisory of mine. Um, Especially when you're beginning, they can be intimidating to unhook. Make your life easier. Put the fish barbless hooks. If if a pike slams your fly, it's not going to come off because they come unbuttoned because you've got fish and barbless. Like, they're going to inhale it, and it's very unlikely you'll lose it to an unbarbed hook. So yeah, I mean, I would say always have the pike's best interests in mind as well. As much as they are ferocious, they're delicate, and you need to look after them. And as fishermen, we want to make sure that they're growing into the 20s, the 30s, the 40s of the world for future generations.
Great. That's some good advice there. Thank you for that. You've touched on muskie, and I don't know a great deal about them. I know a little bit. I've just a little while back finished reading John Girack's recent book, and he
Oh yeah.
has obviously developed a little bit of a passion for musky fishing. It sounds similar, more so in salmon than lack of numbers than anything else, although there can be special days as well. But they're a pretty spectacular fish. For our listeners who don't know much about muskie, how would you describe those comparative to the pike that we have here?
So the muskie is the same gene as the pike, but it is a different strain. Let's say it is far bigger. I mean, in the US waters, they they class a 35-inch fish as an average fish. Um, and that's just mind blowing. If you think about a 35-inch fish, that's huge. Um, a 40-incher, they're happy, but by no means is it a specimen. And the magic number for the Americans and Canadians is a 50-incher. And if you see photos of these 50 inches, oh my God, they are just ginormous, huge things. Getting up to 60 pounds plus. Um, they are, I would say, the epitome of freshwater predator fishing. Um, they sound virtually impossible to catch, but I think that's part of the allure as well. I think, and I've got a couple of good friends out there. Marlon Prince, he's a guide out of where's Marlon out of? St John River, um, and there's a good friend Olivia Michaud. I never pronounce her surname very well, and she's a musky fly angler out of on the Niagara, um, and they're catching some awesome fish out there, absolutely awesome. And I've got a couple of invites to go next year, but we're gonna have to see what happens with COVID and work, and personal life, and see if I can get a pass to go and chase some muskie for a week or two. Would be pretty cool.
I was going to ask you about your dream destination, but I think you've probably answered that. Is there somewhere else that you've always wanted to visit to tick your fly fishing box, as it were?
I'm kind of torn at the minute, Pete. As much as, like we were chatting before that we started recording, that I've been watching a lot of muskie shows, and muskie is very much at the forefront of my mind at the minute, and getting out there and doing that is definitely bucket list. But for me, the arapaima is my ultimate destination fish. To get down into the Amazon and really go all out, and go and see the tribes, and go and immerse yourself in that Amazonian environment, and to chase the arapaima. I mean, the arapaima is just on a fly rod would just be insane. I can't even begin to think what that is like. So yeah, one day.
Fantastic. And we've talked about tackle and setups and everything else. Have you got a Hall of Fame piece of tackle, your favourite rod that you love to use, that you be on the water without it?
Yeah, I mean, it's my it's my Vision Big Daddy TI. Everyone probably knows it as the gaudy yellow one that Vision has. It's bright canary yellow, but I just love it. The action, it's a 9 weight. The action is just superb. I've caught a lot of good fish on it. And for me, in a way, it almost epitomizes what pike fly fishing is. It's it's not olive, it's not brown, it's bright, in your face yellow. We're not gonna, follow the rules. We're going against the grain. This is pike fly fishing. It's cool. It's hip. And that sounds all very cheesy, but that's kind of the image it kind of gives out, which I think is really good. I think because I think it is. I think predator fly fishing appeals to the youth because I think, like I said before, with Canal Gratis and some of the top brands out there that are really marketing the predator fly side as the real up and coming cool thing to go and fish for, um, and to have tackle following that style and that trend, I think really epitomizes the sport right now. And so yeah, the canary rod of TI would be my favourite, 100%.
Fantastic. You loving fishing as much as ever?
Yeah, very much on a very much bad streak at the minute. I think I've had 3 or 4 trips out chasing some big girls, and only came back with tiny little jacks. Well, that's fishing. That's the way it goes. You go through these bad spells, and you've got to just soldier on through them, and the good times will come. So I'm giving the pike a rest this weekend, and I think I'm going to chase some perch instead. So looking forward to that.
Good. I'm sure as a result of this, there's going to be lots of people wanting to know more about pike fishing. And I know on Instagram you put lots of stuff out there, some great pictures, some beautiful flies. How can people find you on social media if they want to?
Social media is probably the best. Is Instagram, Stuart Watson _fly fishing, or on Facebook if they search Stuart Watson or WTF, which is Watson's Toothy Flies, which is my page, which is where I do my fly tying and the fishing adventures kind of side. But yeah, just hit me a line if you've got any questions. Drop me a message, and it's probably worth mentioning. But I'm chairman of what we call the PFFA, Pike Fly Fishing Association, and I can't speak highly enough for our members that everyone is so friendly and everyone is so helpful. And if you are really truly wanting to get into it and looking for, even if it's local guys to you that you can say, I'm based in Thetford, can anyone take me out? I guarantee you there'll be a member in our club that can say, yeah, let's go out Saturday, I'll show you the ropes. And I think that's important with pike fly fishing because I think everyone can have a trepidation about it, and have someone really experienced with you is a good way to go. So I would say definitely it's a shameless plug, but I would say definitely check out the Pike Fly Fishing Association as well. Good bunch of guys, and they'll help you get started.
That is a shameless plug, but a very, very good one as well. And I remember years back, they used to have a forum, didn't they? Years, is that still?
They did, yeah. They did. No, well, to be honest, I took over last year, and the forum hadn't really done much for a few years. And I think technology and social media kind of moved on. Facebook's such a big thing now. So we almost not did away with it. We've archived it for the time being. But yeah, the Facebook group is still very much there. An active website as well, pffa.co.uk. And it's £10 for the year. And it's just a bunch of like-minded predator nuts that meet up most months for a little competition or a little social, and everyone helps each other out. It's bred from the PAC. I think it was 2000 it was started, and there was a few guys within the PAC that we're starting to chuck flies for the pike, and it kind of just separated off from there. We're still very much affiliated with the PAC, but yeah, we kind of do our own thing as well. So
Fantastic. Stuart, this has been a really great chat. I've learned so much, and I'm sure the listeners will do too. I'd like to thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. It's been brilliant.
wow, it's an absolute honour, Pete, and thank you very much for having me. And yeah, guys, if you have any questions, give me a shout. But yeah, get out there, chase those pike.
Fantastic. Stu, thank you very much indeed. It's been brilliant having you on board. Everyone,
Cheers, Pete.
You are most welcome. This has been the Fly Culture Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as all the others. You can always, as we said at the end, if you need some help or advice, you can contact me and I can put you in touch with Stuart, or you can find Stuart, as he said, on social media channels as well. He puts lots of great pictures out and information as well. So hopefully you'll find something from that. We've got lots more planned, so there'll be another podcast very soon. But thanks very much indeed for listening to the Fly Culture Podcast.